My mailman handed me a package I never ordered. "Ma'am, this is the third one this month. Someone's been signing your name. I set up a trap, and what I caught on camera destroyed everything I thought I knew about my own family. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Please like this video and listen to my story all the way through. And tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far my voice can reach." I had lived in the same house for 31 years. A 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Ridge Drive in a quiet suburb outside of Richmond, Virginia. My husband, Walter, and I bought it the summer our son Derek turned 4. We painted the shutters blue, planted dogwood trees in the front yard, and raised our boy in those rooms filled with Sunday dinners and Christmas mornings. Walter passed 5 years ago from a heart attack while mowing the back lawn. I found him lying in the fresh-cut grass, eyes open to the sky, and my world split in half. After the funeral, Derek and his wife Vanessa started visiting every Sunday. Bring the grandkids, eat pot roast, check on Mom. It became our routine, and at 68, I had learned to love routine. It kept me steady. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I volunteered at the church food pantry from 9 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, sorting canned goods, packing boxes for families in need. Pastor Williams always said I was his most reliable volunteer. I took pride in that. Before leaving the house, I would lock the front door, check the back sliding door, and set the alarm system Walter had installed the year before he died. I did it the same way every single time. Walter used to joke about it. "Margaret," he'd say, "you could lock down Fort Knox." I'd smile, but I never stopped checking. The first odd thing happened on a Thursday in early November. I came home from the food pantry and noticed the rug in the hallway was shifted. Not by much, maybe 2 inches to the left. But I vacuum that rug every Monday, and I always line it up with the edge of the baseboard. I stood there staring at it, my coat still on, grocery bag in my hand, trying to remember if I'd bumped it on my way out. I must have. What other explanation was there? The second time was harder to dismiss. I kept an envelope in my nightstand drawer with $500 cash. Emergency money. Walter insisted we always keep some in the house in case of storms or power outages. The following Tuesday evening, I opened the drawer to count it, a habit I'd picked up since living alone, and found $460, $40 missing. I counted it 3 times. I sat on the edge of my bed, heart pounding, and tried to convince myself I'd spent it and forgotten. But I hadn't been to the store. I hadn't bought anything. I knew that money like I knew my own name. I mentioned it to Derek the next Sunday while Vanessa was in the kitchen with the kids. I tried to sound casual, even laughed a little. "Honey, I think I'm losing my mind. I can't account for $40. He put his hand on my shoulder with that look, that patient, slightly worried look I'd been seeing more often. "Mom, it happens. You probably spent it on something small and just don't remember. Maybe we should talk about getting you some help around here. A caretaker, someone to keep track of things." "I don't need a caretaker, Derek. I'm 68, not 90. He raised his hands in surrender. Just a thought. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, drying her hands. She'd heard everything. "Margaret, there's no shame in accepting help. We just want you safe." The way she said it, soft and caring, made me feel like I was being handled, like a patient being told bad news gently. I changed the subject and didn't bring it up again. Then the packages started arriving. A set of kitchen towels I never ordered. A phone case for a model I didn't own. A decorative pillow with a monogram that wasn't mine. 3 packages in 3 weeks, all addressed to my house, all signed with what looked like my name. That's when my mailman, Ray, a man who'd been delivering to Maple Ridge for 15 years, stopped me one morning as I was pulling weeds from the front garden. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, leaning against his truck, "I don't mean to overstep, but these packages coming to your address, they're not right. I've seen this before. Someone might be using your address to receive shipments. Could be identity theft, could be something else. But you should look into it." I thanked him and went inside, but my hands were shaking. The rug. The missing money. Now packages with my name that I never ordered. Something was happening in my house while I was gone, and I had no idea what. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through every room at 2 in the morning, checking windows, examining locks, looking for anything out of place. In Walter's old study, I noticed the filing cabinet was slightly open. The second drawer, where I kept our important documents, deed to the house, insurance policies, Walter's death certificate, my will. I pulled the drawer open and rifled through the folders. Everything seemed present, but the order was wrong. I always kept the deed in front, then insurance, then the will. Now the will was in front, and the deed was behind the insurance folder. Someone had gone through my files and put them back in the wrong order. My skin went cold. I was not imagining this. I was not losing my memory. Someone was entering my home, going through my belongings, stealing small amounts of money, and receiving packages at my address. And they were doing it while I was at the food pantry, because they knew my schedule. I thought about calling Derek, but I already knew what he'd say. Mom, you're confused. Mom, let's get you checked out. He'd use it to push the caretaker idea, or worse, start talking about selling the house and moving me somewhere smaller, somewhere manageable. I thought about calling the police, but what would I report? A shifted rug and $40 missing? They'd be polite about it, take notes, and never follow up. I needed evidence. Hard, undeniable evidence. The idea came to me while I was watching the evening news. A segment about porch pirates being caught on doorbell cameras. If a $10 camera could catch a package thief, a decent hidden camera could catch whoever was violating my home. The next morning, I drove to the electronics store on Route 9. A young woman named Kelsey helped me pick out 2 small cameras, the kind that looked like regular household items. One was disguised as a picture frame. The other looked like a smoke detector. Both recorded video and audio, stored everything on a memory card, and ran on batteries that lasted 12 hours. Kelsey showed me how to set them up, even drew diagrams on the back of a receipt. I spent $230 and drove home with a plan. I placed the picture frame camera on the shelf facing the front door. I mounted the smoke detector camera in the hallway, angled toward the study and the bedroom. I tested them both, checked the angles on my laptop, made sure the footage was clear. Then I did something Walter would have been proud of. I took a photograph of every room in my house with my phone, every rug position, every drawer, every folder in the filing cabinet. Date-stamped proof of how I left things. If anything moved, I'd know, and I'd have the before and after to prove it. Tuesday morning arrived. I activated both cameras at 8:30, gathered my purse and coat, and left for the food pantry at 9 sharp. But I also did something new. I placed a thin strip of clear tape across the bottom of the front door where it met the frame, invisible unless you knew to look. If the door opened, the tape would break. An old trick from a spy novel Walter used to love. At the food pantry, I sorted cans and packed boxes like always, but my mind was 3 miles away on Maple Ridge Drive. At 1:45, I told Pastor Williams I had a headache and left early. I drove home with my hands tight on the steering wheel. The tape was broken. I stood on my front porch, staring at the torn strip, my pulse hammering. Someone had been inside. I unlocked the door, stepped in, and immediately checked the cameras. Both still recording. Red lights dark. Just like Kelsey promised. I stopped the recording, pulled the memory cards, and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. The picture frame camera had captured everything. At 10:12 in the morning, my front door opened. A woman walked in first. Mid-40s, blonde highlights. Wearing a fitted blazer and carrying a leather tote bag. She moved through my foyer like she lived there, dropping her purse on Walter's chair without a second thought. Behind her came a man, younger, maybe 30, wearing khakis and a polo shirt, carrying a clipboard. "She's gone until 2, the woman said. "We've got almost 4 hours. The man nodded, already heading for the study. "I'll pull the documents." Did you bring the new beneficiary forms? Right here. The woman patted her tote bag. Derek says she hasn't noticed anything yet. We just need to get the amended will notarized before she figures it out. I stopped breathing. Derek says, the man disappeared into the study. Through the hallway camera, I watched him open the filing cabinet, pull out my will, photograph every page with his phone. He spread papers on Walter's desk, comparing documents, making notes on his clipboard. The woman, meanwhile, walked into my kitchen. She opened my refrigerator, poured herself a glass of my iced tea, and leaned against my counter scrolling through her phone. When the man called her from the study, she strolled back casually, sipping from my glass. The beneficiary change is straightforward, the man said. We swap Derek as sole heir, remove the grandchildren's trust provision, and add the power of attorney clause. Once she's declared incompetent, Derek controls everything. The house alone is worth $450,000, maybe $500,000. And the bank accounts? 3 accounts totaling about $220,000. Plus, the life insurance payout she's been sitting on. Walter's policy was $300,000. She barely touches it. The woman laughed. $500,000 in a house and $300,000 in insurance. And she's volunteering at a food pantry. Honestly, it's sad. Derek says she has no idea what any of it's worth. Derek says, my son, my only child. The boy I drove to Little League, whose homework I checked every night, who cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke up with him. The man I'd lent $30,000 to when his business struggled, who I'd never asked to repay. He was behind this. I watched the entire recording twice. 2 hours and 17 minutes of these strangers rifling through my life. The man was a paralegal. I gathered from their conversation. The woman appeared to be a real estate associate. They discussed comparable home values in my neighborhood, talked about which assisted living facilities were cheapest, debated how quickly they could sell the house once I was out. They took cash from my nightstand, $60 this time. They opened packages that had been delivered. Items the woman had ordered online using my address and an account in my name to establish a pattern of confused purchasing behavior. Evidence that I was losing my grip. Before leaving at 1:30, the woman stood in my living room and looked around with an expression I will never forget. Appraising, calculating, like she was already mentally redecorating. 6 more months, she said. Derek's setting up the competency evaluation for January. After that, it's done. I closed the laptop and sat in my kitchen until the sun went down. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt something colder than grief, colder than anger. I felt certainty, absolute crystalline certainty about what I needed to do. The next morning, I made copies of every video file onto 4 USB drives. One I hid in the church, inside the hymnal cabinet where no one would think to look. One I gave to my neighbor, Dorothy Graves, a retired nurse who'd lived next door for 20 years. One I mailed to my attorney, Richard Holloway, with a letter explaining everything, and one I kept in a lockbox at the bank. Richard called me that afternoon. Margaret, this is serious criminal activity. Trespassing, theft, fraud, conspiracy to forge legal documents. We need to go to the police today. Not yet, I said. I need to know who these people are. And I need to understand how deep Derek's involvement goes. The video shows them mentioning his name, but I want undeniable proof before I destroy my son's life. You're being more generous than he deserves. I'm being thorough. I spent the next week investigating. I searched property records online, something my granddaughter had taught me, and found the real estate woman's name through her company's website. Brenda Marsh, associate broker at a firm that specialized in estate liquidations. The paralegal was harder to identify, but Richard's office tracked him through the law firm, whose name appeared on the clipboard. In the video footage, Ryan Keller, employed by a firm that handled conservatorship cases. They specialized in getting families control over elderly relatives' assets. On Saturday, I played the long game. Derek and Vanessa came for their usual Sunday visit. I watched my son carve the pot roast, joke with his children, kiss my cheek when he arrived. And I said nothing. I watched Vanessa compliment my cooking, offer to help with dishes, casually ask if I'd considered downsizing yet. "There's a lovely community in Henrico County," she said. "Brand new, beautiful gardens. Some of the ladies from my book club have parents there, and they just love it." "I'll think about it," I said, and watched relief flicker across her face. She thought I was softening. She thought their plan was working. Monday morning, I went to my bank and met with the manager. "I need a full audit of my accounts," I said. "Every transaction for the past 12 months, and I need to freeze any changes to my beneficiary designations, my will, and any power of attorney filings." The audit revealed 11 unauthorized transactions totaling $4,200. Small withdrawals, small purchases, nothing large enough to trigger a fraud alert. Someone had also requested a change of address for my bank statements 3 months ago, rerouting them to a P.O. box I'd never opened. That's why I hadn't noticed the discrepancies. I wasn't receiving my own mail. I also filed a report with the postal inspector about the packages and the redirected mail. Mail fraud is a federal offense. I wanted every avenue covered. The following Tuesday, I activated my cameras, left for the food pantry at 9, and then drove straight to the coffee shop on Henderson Avenue. At 10:20, Dorothy texted me, "2 people just went inside your house." Same car as last time. At 10:40, I drove home. I parked in the driveway, walked to my front door, and let myself in. They were in the study. Brenda was photographing documents with her phone. Ryan had my will spread across the desk. They both froze when they saw me standing in the doorway. "Good morning," I said. "I see you've made yourselves comfortable again." Brenda recovered first. She smiled. Professional, warm, rehearsed. "Mrs. Patterson, Derek asked us to check on the house while you were out. He's been worried about you. We were just making sure everything was in order." "In order?" With my will on the desk and a camera in your hand, Ryan started gathering papers. "This is a misunderstanding, Mrs. Patterson. I have video footage of every visit you've made to my home. I have bank records of every dollar you've stolen. I have documentation of the mail fraud, the forged account changes, and the falsified beneficiary forms. My attorney has copies of everything, and so does the postal inspector. So please stop talking and get out of my house." Brenda's smile vanished. Her eyes went hard. "Mrs. Patterson, Derek is your son. He has every right to manage your affairs. My son has no right to steal from me. And neither do you. Leave now or I call the police while you're still standing in my living room." They left. Brenda paused at the door and turned. "You're making a mistake, Margaret. We were trying to help your family. When Derek finds out you've done this, you'll wish you'd cooperated. Tell my son to call me himself, if he has the courage." Derek called that evening. "Mom, Brenda said you were upset when she stopped by. I asked her to look in on you. I don't understand why you'd be angry about that." His voice was so smooth, so concerned. If I hadn't seen the videos, heard his name spoken by strangers planning to take everything I owned, I might have believed him. The realization that my son could lie to me this effortlessly was worse than any theft. "Derek, I know everything. I have cameras in the house. I have footage of Brenda and Ryan going through my documents, discussing your plan to have me declared incompetent and steal this house. I have bank records showing thousands in unauthorized transactions. I have evidence of mail fraud. This is over." Silence. 10 seconds. 20. Then his voice changed. Dropped the warmth, the concern, the performance. "Mom, you don't understand the situation. That house is too much for you. You're sitting on $500,000 in equity while you clip coupons and sort canned goods for strangers. Dad would have Don't you dare tell me what your father would have wanted. This house should be my inheritance. I shouldn't have to wait until you die to benefit from it. Do you know how much debt Vanessa and I have? The kids' school tuition alone is $40,000 a year. You're living in a 5-bedroom house alone, hoarding money you'll never spend, while your own son struggles. That's not right, Mom. That's selfish. The word hit like a slap. Selfish. For living in my own home, spending my own money, breathing my own air. I raised you, I said quietly. I gave you everything. I lent you $30,000 you never repaid. And now you're calling me selfish because I won't let you steal my house. I'm not stealing it. I'm trying to help you transition. You're trying to have me committed so you can sell my home and pocket the money. That's not a transition, Derek. That's a crime. If you pursue this, you'll look like a paranoid old woman. Brenda and Ryan are professionals. They'll testify they were checking on you at my request. Your own neighbors will say you've been forgetful and confused. My neighbors will say what Dorothy Graves tells them. And Dorothy has a copy of every video. Another silence. Mom, please. Think about the grandchildren. Think about what this will do to our family. You should have thought about that before you sent strangers to rob me. I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time, holding Walter's photograph, letting the grief wash through me. Not for the son I had, but for the son I thought I had. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Richard filed criminal complaints with both local police and federal authorities for the mail fraud. The postal inspector took it seriously because redirecting someone's mail is a federal crime. Brenda Marsh and Ryan Keller were arrested within a week, charged with burglary, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Brenda hired an expensive attorney who argued she was merely assisting a concerned son. The video evidence made that defense laughable. The jury watched her sit in my kitchen drinking my iced tea while discussing how to liquidate my assets. They watched Ryan forge documents at my dead husband's desk. They heard both of them laugh about my ignorance, my routine, my trust. Brenda was convicted on all counts. She received 3.5 years in prison, lost her real estate license permanently, and was ordered to pay full restitution plus $25,000 in damages. Her firm fired her and issued a public statement distancing themselves from her actions. Ryan cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. He testified that Derek had approached Brenda through a mutual friend at a country club, that the plan had been in motion for over a year, and detailed information about my finances and mental state. Ryan received 18 months and permanent disbarment from paralegal certification. Derek's trial was separate. He was charged with conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, and theft. His attorney argued he was a devoted son who'd made poor choices out of genuine concern for his mother. The prosecutor played my videos. She showed the bank records. She called Dorothy Graves, who testified I was sharp, active, and perfectly capable. She called Pastor Williams, who described me as one of the most organized and reliable people he'd ever known. She called a geriatric specialist who had evaluated me and confirmed I had no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Then I took the stand. I looked at my son sitting at the defense table in his pressed suit, and I told the truth. I described the missing money, the moved documents, the packages I never ordered. I described the fear of wondering if I was losing my mind. I described the night I sat in my kitchen after watching the video, realizing my only child had orchestrated a plan to steal my home and lock me away. The prosecutor asked me, Mrs. Patterson, what was the hardest part of this experience? Knowing that every Sunday dinner, every hug, every time he said, I love you, Mom, he was gathering information to use against me. The betrayal wasn't just financial. He stole my ability to trust. The jury was out for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge, a man in his 50s who'd clearly seen cases like this before, addressed Derek directly. Mr. Patterson, your mother raised you in the very house you tried to steal. She supported you financially, emotionally, and unconditionally. In return, you conspired to have her declared mentally incompetent, redirected her mail, authorized strangers to enter her home, and planned to sell her property for personal profit. This court sentences you to 4 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 2 years, contingent on completion of a court-mandated rehabilitation program. Derek didn't look at me as they led him away. Vanessa, who had been sitting in the gallery every day of the trial, left the courtroom without a word. She filed for divorce the following month. I pursued a civil suit against all 3 of them. The evidence was overwhelming, and the judge awarded me $180,000 in damages. Brenda's savings were seized. Ryan's wages would be garnished for years. Derek's share of the judgment came from the joint accounts Vanessa didn't claim in the divorce. I donated a third of the settlement to the church food pantry and the local elder abuse prevention center. Another third went into a trust fund for my grandchildren, Emma and Jack. They were 12 and 9, old enough to be confused but too young to fully understand what their father had done. I wanted them to know their grandmother loved them, regardless of what happened between the adults. The final third I kept. Not because I needed it, but because I earned it. Vanessa brought the grandchildren to visit once a month after things settled. She was angry, hurt, rebuilding her own life, but she never kept them from me. She sat at my kitchen table one Sunday while the kids played in the backyard, the same backyard where Walter used to push Derek on the tire swing, and said something I didn't expect. "I didn't know, Margaret. I swear I didn't know the details. I knew Derek was talking to a real estate person, but he told me it was for when you eventually decided to sell. I believed him because I wanted to believe him." I looked at her and saw my own pain reflected back. We were both women betrayed by the same man. "I know," I said. "And I'm sorry for what you're going through too." Derek wrote me letters from prison. I read the first one. It was full of excuses and self-pity. He blamed his debt. He blamed Vanessa's spending. He blamed the economy, the school tuition, everything except himself. I didn't read the second letter, or the third, or any after that. He came up for parole after 2 years. I attended the hearing. I sat in a plastic chair in a government building that smelled like floor wax and stale coffee, and I told the parole board exactly why early release was inappropriate. "He has not taken responsibility," I said. "He has not acknowledged the harm. He has only expressed regret at being caught." Parole denied. He would serve his full sentence. 3 years after the trial, my life looked nothing like what Derek had planned for me. The house on Maple Ridge Drive was still mine, freshly painted with new landscaping Dorothy and I had done together. I'd converted Walter's study into a small office where I ran a volunteer hotline for seniors experiencing financial exploitation. My story had been featured in the Richmond paper, and I'd spoken at 2 community events about elder abuse awareness. Dorothy and I took a cruise to the Bahamas. I joined a watercolor class at the community college. I started a garden club with 3 other women on my street. At 71, I had more purpose, more connection, more joy than I'd had in years. Emma, my granddaughter, asked me once during a visit if I hated her father. I sat her down on the porch swing, the same swing where I used to read to Derek when he was small, and told her the truth. "I love your father because he's my son. But love doesn't mean allowing someone to hurt you. What he did was wrong, and he's facing the consequences of his choices. You can love someone and still hold them accountable. Those 2 things are not opposites." She nodded slowly, wise beyond her 12 years. "Grandma, I'm glad you caught them." "So am I, sweetheart. So am I." Derek was released after serving his full 4 years. He moved to another state. He didn't call. I heard through Vanessa that he was working in a warehouse, living in a rented room, trying to rebuild. I hope he does. I genuinely hope he finds his way. But he won't do it at my expense. Not anymore. Brenda Marsh lost her career, her reputation, her savings. Last I heard, she was working as a receptionist in a town where nobody knew her name. Ryan Keller moved west and disappeared from public records. Their crimes followed them in background checks and Google searches. The internet remembers everything. My house is still mine. My money is still mine. My mind is still sharp. still clear, still mine. Nobody will ever again make me doubt that. If something feels wrong in your home, in your life, in the way someone treats you, trust that feeling. Don't let anyone, not even the people you love most, convince you that your instincts are failing. Document everything. Ask for help. You are not confused. You are not too old. You are not too anything to fight for what is yours. What would you do if the person you trusted most turned out to be the one stealing from you? Tell me in the comments. And if this story spoke to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Stay strong, stay safe, and never let anyone make you feel small. Thank you for listening.